there are certain ground realities today in terms of the monsoon. It could be worse than 7% less, people are saying now. Then there is this whole Iraq crisis. We know the impact of the ISIS making inroads into Iraq. You know, we import huge amounts of oil from Iraq. And the third fact is the economy that you've inherited. You have committed payments on various subsidies. So how much legroom does Mr. Jaitley really have to start with, Omkar Goswami? The most he can do, I mean, my guess would be he'd only do some strong signaling. Yeah.
Arnab, he has, admittedly, I think all of us agree that he has relatively little legroom. And part of that is the last 3 years of fudging, and there's no question about it. The point is that there is still ways of reducing expenditure. There are still ways of raising non-tax revenue. As I said to you, there is a substantial amount of non-tax revenue that can be got from disinvestment. There are other ways of raising non-tax revenue. There are ways of giving the right kind of signal. It is unlikely that he is going to have 4.6 or 4.1 is out of the question. It's unlikely that he's going to have 4.6. He should simply say that there is, as everyone said, including Meghnad, that there's been a total sleight of hand. This is complete nonsense that you've been fed over the last 2 years. It doesn't matter. There are only 44 fellows at Lok Sabha, so it doesn't matter. And you have to say what the true picture is. And given the true picture, I'm constrained. However, that doesn't mean that reforms are going to stop. My first reform, for instance, as I said to you, is I'm getting rid of the retrospective tax legislation. My second reform, if it's possible, is I'm getting rid of the dividend distribution tax. Let some things, let sentiments boom, and then put a few tough conditions as you go along. You can't do everything in one budget. He hasn't had the time, but he can still negotiate and do it well. And remember one thing, the moment you think you can go slow on reforms, you can kiss reforms goodbye. Because sitting in every ministry are babus who do not wish it to happen.
I really must say one point, Arnab, on what Dr. Omkar Goswami said. He's talking about keeping the sentiment going. The sentiment he's talking about is retrospective tax and dividend tax. The sentiment will be affected in the markets and in corporate India.
And that will help divestment.
And the cuts will happen for the real people because the food subsidy will go. These are two different audiences that you are, one doesn't compensate the other or balance the other.
Because the food subsidy, by the way, Navika, the food subsidy does not go.
Now, Arnab, I want to come in here.
You can't even reduce
Arnab,
it because it's a political problem.
1 minute, 90,000
Omkar, can I just come in here, yaar?
Budgeted for 12, 13, 14.
But Davika,
90,000 crores.
But Davika, why
13,
do you
14.
say the food subsidy
All
goes?
I'm saying is, if you were to reduce that by 10%, 9,000 crores, nothing will happen. Nothing. Zero.
So he's not saying food subsidies will go. No, what Omkar Goswami is saying, and we really must bring this discussion to fundamentals. What Omkar Goswami, by the way, Omkar Goswami, you are going to be known as the next Mr. 10%. You've referred to 10% about 10 times in the course of the program. You want to shave off 10% here and 10% there, Omkar Goswami. The fact is this, that you don't really remove anything, he says. He says, just tighten it up, make it more efficient. But gentlemen, if we agree there is no leg room, there's a crisis in Iraq, there's a weak monsoon, you've inherited a terrible economy, you've carried forward subsidy payments, then all you can do is some very nice, strong symbolism. What Omkar Goswami's thesis is, and let's spend some time talking about that, is send some very strong messages, criticize the past.
Arnab,
right,
exactly.
Right, Sanjeev? He's talking.
So what we need.
Yeah. What are the signals you want to see?
Exactly. So what I think they have to do. So I think what they have to do is to look for giving signals which are outside of the fiscal. The point I'm trying to make out is, given how little legroom they have, well, go in for labor reforms. Why not announce major changes in rules and regulations and all kinds of different areas which don't have to be strictly fiscal? That's the point I'm making. This is a great time to give the broader
labor reforms is very little of it is in the center.
That
it can be done in the states.
Arnab, I want to come in here now. I haven't said a word for quite some time.
Yes, Mr. Alag, I know that's unusual.
No, look, what I agree with what Navika said earlier. All of us seem to be saying things which are going to help industry. No way is this budget going to go in that direction. There is some things which need to be done for industry. They're quite right. Whatever, 1 or 2 steps. But what is going to happen to the Aam Aadmi if you don't explain that? This budget will become so pro-industry that they will come in for a massive amount of criticism. They will have to move it away from there.
But Meghnad Desai says all that does not matter.
Calcutta,
Meghnad Desai says you have this terrible Aam Aadmi mindset.
Please, it matters.
It does not matter.
No. The mindset. No, the mindset. I agree with Meghnad in saying don't do this, but don't do it in one shot. But do not forget the Aam Aadmi.
No, what Meghnad Desai is saying is don't carry the burden of onion and brinjal prices when you're trying to send out a message to the world.
Burdens, yaar. No, 1 second. If you increase,
he actually agrees with me.
I'm talking about how to deal with the Aam Aadmi. Right. I am saying you have to do a bit of both. You'll have to balance it. You have to take this, but the way we are discussing everything is to give industry the right shape, let them get their factories going, let them generate employment, let them do this. That is not the way the budget is going to be done if I was in their place. There has to be things which is there for the common man as well. And saying, look, we all have to tighten our belt. We are now moving that the lowest level slab we are increasing. No tax there. So a little bit of money comes in to pay for your diesel. You will have to leave diesel open, but you'll have to give them money to pay for it. The average guy, the rich guys don't matter. They are the ones that don't matter in the system. And that's all that we seem to be discussing is the rich guys.
Sunil,
the poor guys can be given some money.
I think
Rajiv Kumar.
Someone onion prices were 100 rupees. One last point. Onion prices were 100 rupees a kilo last year. It's 30 rupees this year. There's a saving of 70 rupees there. You got to balance the person's budget. You're spending more here, you're spending less here, and you're finally getting a little more money in your hands. That's the message that has to go to the poor man.
Mr. Alag.
And without that, let me tell you, all the other things are not going to happen.
Yes, Rajiv.
Sunil, you are putting up a straw man which nobody has proposed here so far. I said very clearly that Mr. Jaitley has to tell the industry, sorry, we can't succumb to your pressures. You are saying that this budget is going to be pro-industry, pro-rich. None of us is saying that.
I said we are discussing only points which are pro-industry.
But we are also discussing the point.
So I'd like to ask Sunil a question.
That there have to be an overhaul of the CBDC.
A little balance between the two.
So that the tax net gets widened. 3.5% of our Indian state taxes. It's an absolute travesty.
Correct.
It's a travesty. So what you can do is to raise the lower
fully agree with you, Rajiv.
But at least get the rich into the tax net.
Get more people.
That is what needs to be done. But the other thing that you need to do is to, as Sanjeev has been saying, is to use this budget to lay out a reform agenda, a roadmap.
Right.
About FDI and defense.
The industry wants a transparent roadmap. That's all. That's good enough to change the perception.
So if you
lay out a clear, transparent roadmap.
Lay out a roadmap and tell the people that we are not going to be like the UPA to call the budget an accounting exercise, but the budget will be a statement of government intent on how the government wants to help the poor of the country. The problem in our country is that no finance minister
I think that's
made the
exactly
case
right.
for liberal economics for the poor people, as to how a liberal order, how an open market economy helps the poor. This is the budget
because Rajiv, there is no credible proof that any voter is going to buy into it. And you have had this election after umpteen cycles of food inflation. No, Rajiv, let's be very realistic today. Why did the BJP win the election?
That is totally not true.
No, why did the BJP win the election?
They won it on a slogan of minimum government, maximum governance.
That's what you think, Sanjeev.
It was absolutely unapologetically reform.
No, if you think people in UP were voting for... No, 1 minute. I must settle this with Sanjeev, my friend Sanjeev.
You will be surprised.
If you think, Sanjeev, that people there in UP and Bihar and elsewhere had bought into a slogan of minimum government, maximum governance, and not on the basis of the fact that vegetable prices went up by 350%. If you think they are buying some kind of corporate slogan, rather than the fact that even salt prices, even namak, even salt was costing more than 100% in the years of UPA, then you'd probably be fooling yourself, Sanjeev.
Yes.
This even fruit prices went up by 100%.
No, but
I think we must be realistic about what Navika is putting on repeatedly here. That containing inflation will have to be a central message and a priority of the government, and anything short of that in this budget will be seen to be a letdown.
Do that.
So what are you going? Why don't we talk about that?
But I don't understand why.
Yeah, but Arnab, I'm saying that.
Why do you think that the average voter was thinking of inflation as being some sort of a socialist? Inflation control.
This was a vote against the Congress government because it could not
perfectly be good at controlling.
No, Sanjeev, the Congress government could not do anything to control prices. Now the situation is this: you have a weak monsoon, you have inherited a terrible state of the economy in terms of the balance within your budget. Right, and you also have this looming Iraq crisis, which is going to have an impact on fuel prices. You are going to have to.
So I'm agreeing with you. This is precisely what I'm saying.
No. So, Mike, simple.
So this is precisely what I'm saying.
My
so you cannot do. You have very little fiscal room. So begin to do other reforms.
No. That is for investors.
Exactly
that's for global investors. I'm asking you, what about the Aam Aadmi? What do they get?
No, so this is the point.
Person
it's not
who
about
voted the BJP in, what does he get?
Point is,
what does the Aam Aadmi, the middle class, and by the way, the middle class was a large part of the support base of the BJP. What do they get?
Jobs.
What do they get?
Jobs.
Jobs. When?
Jobs.
4 years from now.
Jobs.
No, what the middle class gets.
That is the point.
No, Arnab, what the middle class gets is better education in the public schools.
Can I come in after Meghnad?
What the middle class gets is a better health. And I tell you, Arnab, people may have been anti-incumbency, but they also voted because Modi kuch karke dikhayega. And this budget has to be about kya karke dikhayega. Better delivery of public services is part of the budget statement. You cannot just pour in money on education without doing the reforms. And what therefore Mr. Jaitley can do is once again raise his resources, improve the revenues, improve the CBDT, and at the same time lay out a statement of how this government will improve the delivery of public services to the people with which they will be benefited. And that's how
as long as there is, I'm coming to you, Omkar, after Meghnad, this, as long as, I only look at it in a very short-term perspective also sometimes, because Mr. Jaitley will have to promise something that the Aam Aadmi gets immediately and then tell him to have patience for the next 3 or 4 years. I'm just saying from a very broad term perspective, that's how I'd look at it. What is that something which he can say you're getting in the next 6 months, Meghnad Desai? And don't tell me I have this terrible myopic mindset and all that. There's something he's going to have to give to the people who voted him in. Him in as in the government in.
I think can I first of all say, subsidies don't reduce the rate of inflation, subsidies add to deficits, and subsidies wreck public finances. What we have to, first of all, in order to create room for himself, he has to have a huge amount of money from divestment, which will ease the burden of meeting the expenditure targets that the UPA has not paid for. And then he has to say that within a very quick time, they'll convert all subsidies to direct cash transfer. Direct cash transfer is the only way to have efficient help for the poor. Subsidies are not efficient way of running the economy, and it's time we stop them. And this government has to give that signal early on. In the first budget, very soon, they will stop all these subsidies and they will go to the direct cash transfer for the poor. That is the most important reform they can do, because all these petroleum subsidies, they're not for the middle classes. People who use petrol are rich. People who use LPG are the better off.
So
the people who use diesel, same thing. So we have to really look at the really poor.
No, I'm just curious. On a lighter note, if people who use kerosene are rich, one second. If people who use kerosene are rich, people who use diesel are rich, people who use petrol are rich, then what do the poor use? Aviation fuel.
Is mainly a black. Kerosene is black marketed, as Rajiv said, but they certainly don't use LPG. They use wood and coal for burning.
That's little. That's a.
Go to the UP.
But diesel prices add to the cascading effect as far as inflation is concerned. Because transport prices go up and every single commodity costs more if diesel prices are high. So that also is something that affects the poor.
You can be absolutely certain.
That is always the excuse.
Okay, Omkar.
Absolutely certain that diesel prices, either officially or otherwise, will be freed up. Okay, you can be 100% certain. I'm going to add one more thing, and this is what Rajiv talked about, and only Rajiv did. I think there is a pretty strong groundswell within, at least in Mr. Jaitley's mind, that a huge amount, well over 350 to 400,000 crores, is being held up in tax litigation. And when we asked the person in charge of this, what were the thresholds? Do you know that an amount of up to after 25 lakhs, the government takes it to the Supreme Court. They litigate to the Supreme Court for a 25 lakh tax demand at that level, okay? I think one of the things you will see, it's not going to be an amnesty, but I think what you're going to see is CBDT being told to settle tax issues quickly so that by settling, he will be able to get a larger amount of tax revenues locked up. And remember a very simple thing. Budgets are based on cash-based accounting. It's not accrual accounting like companies. So what you get in the end of the year is what you have. So if he can open up the tax revenues by telling the CBDT, stop taking these cases, half of them settle, he is going to get a large amount of tax revenue held up for donkey's years.
Yeah. A senior bureaucrat once told me something like, share that anecdote.
Arnab, just...
Yes. No, go ahead, Rajiv.
Point out that 2.5 lakh crore are held up at the level of the Chief Commissioner appeals.
I know.
Now, they just blithely said in a response, 90% is recoverable.
But Rajiv, once a senior bureaucrat told me that if you challenge me on something that I have done right, I will take you to the High Court. If you challenge me on something I know I have done wrong, I will take you right up to the Supreme Court. That's just on a lighter note, because I think governments can be fairly rigid if they want to.
Such bureaucrats should be turfed out.
But in conclusion, I'd say I think Narendra Modi has taken that message. I've watched his speeches. I've been watching what he says. And I think that when he said this, and I thought this particular quote went unnoticed, he said, I am well aware that my steps may dent the immense love that the country has given to me, but the countrymen will realize that these steps will get the financial health back. I will regain that love. I think it tells me that Modi is working towards...
What a good statement.
Not a 3 month. He's working towards 3 or 4 year roadmap. And I think he'll fight for the elections only in the final year. Gentlemen, it's been lovely talking to you. We'll take these discussions forward. Thank you for joining us on the chat today on what that bitter pill, Kadwi Dawai, could be. Thank you very much. So Modi said, "Achhe din aane wale hain" during the entire campaign, and now he's talking about the Kadwi Dawai, the bitter pill. How bitter is that going to be? What are the kind of options which he has? Is he going to increase or reduce taxes? Is his budget going to work for the middle class? Can he actually take away subsidies? There's so much to talk about. And joining us today, and it's great, it's great that we have some of the finest minds with us once again. In this budget coverage, and joining us back, let's introduce, of course, Navika Kumar, and I will take you through the budget coverage. Our political editor joining us from Delhi, Dr. Omkar Goswami, senior economist and founder and chairperson of CERG. I never realized how you pronounce that. Kerg Advisory Private Limited, someone we all respect very much. Omkar, it's good to see you back. It's great to see Meghnad Desai, Lord Meghnad Desai. one of India's best regarded economists, and if I may say so, political analysts as well after this election, live from London. Also joining us today from London is someone I will not introduce in a modified way, but as chairman of SK Advisors, man with huge corporate experience and a great sense of humor, sometimes over the top. Sunil Alag joining us from London. Dr. Rajiv Kumar, Senior Fellow of the Center for Policy Research, someone who understands industry, corporate affairs, the macroeconomic picture very well. And my dear friend and the very respected global strategist of Deutsche Bank from Singapore, making his mark in the international arena. His words are taken very, very seriously these days. Sanjeev Sanyal from Singapore, thank you very much. So where do we begin? Navika, I throw it open to you, and then you can take the discussion forward with our panelists, From an Aam Aadmi perspective, when you talk about tough measures, bitter pills, then you're beginning this whole guessing game. And that's what happened, when Modi said that the previous government left everything empty, the financial health has hit rock bottom, and he went on to say that no matter how loving a child is, and I remember, a mother has to administer the bitter medicine to cure that child. Now, since then, all of us, I'm sure including you, have been wondering how serious the infection is and how bitter that pill is going to be. Navika, where do you think it's going to go eventually on budgeting?
Well, clearly, Arnab, this budget is going to be either for better days or bitter pills. That's one way of looking at it. Will it be high on SOPs or will it be low on populism? That is the tightrope that Arun Jaitley will need to walk. He's the finance minister. But let me tell you what an insider in the finance ministry and a top government source told me. He said the Congress had left such gaping holes in the budget that if the BJP were to actually expose it, the international acceptance of the Indian budgeting process would go for a toss and we would be downgraded without a batting of an eyelid. So they can't really expose the Congress on that. So what is left is really the bitter pill that they'll have to swallow in this budget, because there really isn't enough money to do anything and there are gaping holes in the budget that need to be covered. So whichever way you're looking at it, higher taxes or lower subsidies, these are the two sides of the same coin, and that's the way Finance Minister Arun Jaitley will need to look at it. And clearly, Omkar Goswami sitting here with me is the economist, of course. And Omkar, which way do you think Arun Jaitley is going to look at this?
Navika, let me start by saying this is Mr. Jaitley's first budget of a new government which has come into power after 1984 with a majority on its own party's team. Okay. While there has to be a lot of control on expenditure, the fact of the matter is that he has to give a signal of change that had long disappeared under UPA 2 and indeed even UPA 1. So let me say the three things that I would expect him to do. One which has relatively less cost, one which is a little bit costlier, and then a bitter pill, and then we can talk about it later. The first thing he should do, and everybody, bar none, has told him, except his civil servants, that he will win huge kudos getting rid of the retrospective tax legislation that the man who sits on top of Raisina Hill introduced as the finance minister. If nothing else, that alone will create a huge positive for the country. The second, it costs money. It's not that huge. It's about 13,000 crore, perhaps, is to get rid of the dividend distribution tax. Because a dividend comes out of net profits. The tax was put in by different people, Yashwant Sinha, then Chidambaram, in order to garner some revenue. There's no basis for that tax, okay? I think these two things would be great positives as a signal.
And that would take care of the markets as well.
That will take care of the markets and the signal. The two things that he has to do, one as a bitter pill and one as action. The bitter pill will have to be, without specifying in any great detail, because if you specify in too much detail, then like Yashwant Sinha, you'll have to roll back in 48 hours. So you cannot specify in details, but you can knock off 10 to 15% of the fertilizer subsidy. You can knock off definitely 10% of the food subsidy. And even in a milieu of higher crude oil prices, you can knock off about 10% on the fuel subsidy. Do not specify. Let the ministries do what they will do in the course of the year.
No, but you'll have to specify.
Just quietly cut the number.
You have to specify, Omkar.
Just cut the number.
You'll have to specify because, okay,
No.
By the way, this is an open conversation.
No. Arnab, I don't have to.
Omkar, I know we have been missing each other, and I am.
You don't have to specify. You can cut the number. You can simply cut the expenditure.
No, but what if you have the scope of the food security bill?
You are just cutting the expenditure.
No, but who will you target? And which area
I'm
will
just cutting the expenditure, Arnab. I'm just saying what I will specify, Arnab, that what I'm going to simply say as finance minister is that these amounts are going to be reduced. How they will be reduced, when the price increase will take place on urea is not for me to say in the budget, okay? And finally, the fourth is he has a kitty called disinvestment. There are at least 10 public sector banks where he can disinvest sequentially and carefully, and he has 10 large listed public sector enterprises where the government holds sizable stakes well above 50%. He can bring it down to 52% if he wants to be safe. But over a next 24-month period, carefully done, this can be done.
No, Omkar,
so that's my view.
I take your point. Now, coming with an interruption, I just want to add one point. God is in the details. You have 1.15 lakh crore on food subsidies. Significant portion, 70% or more of that, 88,500 crore is for the food law. So when you're saying you trim the expenditure, then the follow-up question, and Surya can take that are you in a position today, within 2 months or less of the general election, to trim the scope of the food security bill to target only the really poor? Can you do that? Now, Surya, you want to take that? And by the way, feel free to come into each other. And Sanjeev, feel free to come in as well into the conversation whenever you want. Yeah.
Let's look at it from 2 points of view. The real budget which will be presented by the government will be in February next year. This is an interim budget. And I think what Mr. Jaitley is going to, I suppose what he needs to do is to show that the first couple of budgets are going to be economic budgets and not political budgets, because he will have to get in the fourth and fifth year into a political budget again. The first couple of years will have to be pure economic budgets. And as far as I'm concerned, what Omkar is saying, perhaps they won't be able to do that straight away because they've got 3 state elections coming up right now. So there'll be a bit of politics played up to February. The February budget will be the bitterest pill of all. Let me just tell you that this time, what they're going to do is going to lay out a roadmap, not to say.
So they'll have to show some of that. There's the politics of the budget that they'll have to keep in mind.
But let me tell you, let me tell you 1 second. This Achhe Din Aane Wale Hai, Modi has said 10 times. For 60 years, the Congress has led this. Give me 60 months.
Can you risk
You're expecting him to do it in 6 weeks.
Can you risk that?
I've been talking to people. Nobody's expecting Achhe Din in 2 weeks. I mean, he's not in charge of a bad monsoon. He's not in charge of everything. If everyone is saying, if you want me to... let me even tell you on railways, please, before you all carry on, a lot of people said we don't mind paying the extra fares if the service improves. The trains are collapsing. Where is he going to get the money? I think he's going to transparently appeal.
That's your guesstimate.
No,
it's not my guesstimate. See what he did in Gujarat.
The general man on the street doesn't feel that.
No, you're actually saying people are saying thank you for the rail fare hike.
In Gujarat, he made farmers. 1 second,
can you forget the Gujarat model for once?
Fares at 2% every year for the last... No, 1 second. If you had increased it at 2 or 3% every year, would you have had to increase by 15% this year? No.
You see,
the last government for 6 years, because of Mamata Banerjee, never increased fares. Can you imagine for 5 years, no increase in fares? Obviously, you'll have to increase it by 15% in one shot.
Okay, Meghna, this side.
Can I come in here?
Sanjeev Saria wants to come in before you. Yes, Sanjeev. Yes, Sanjeev. How unpopular can a... No, 1 second. Well, let's Sanjeev in first, because he said, "Can I come in first before you?" And in this conversation, the person who puts their finger in first comes in first. Yes, Sanjeev.
Okay, I agree with the point that I think the finance minister would not have had a lot of time to really come up with a full budget. So I think I agree with the idea that the real Modi-Jaitley budget is going to be in February. But nonetheless, I think investors around the world are going to look at this budget for big pointers. So it's not just about the big measures that are actually announced, but about the broader economic framework that we should expect over the next 5 years. So I think it's not just about the purely fiscal measures that will be announced. This budget will be watched for much more than that.
Which is what? Be specific. Be specific with what? For example, Sanjeev.
So I think one of the important things here is to recognize that India has a serious supply side problem. Even the inflation problem is not a demand problem. It's a real problem with the efficiency of the productive side of the Indian economy. And I think in order to sort that out, we need to begin to see a serious reform agenda, which is beyond just the purely fiscal aspect of this budget. So I think this budget will be watched for signs on a much broader agenda, whether it's labor laws or its simplification of the tax system. All of these issues will be have to be discussed. It's not just about how do you somehow get this fiscal deficit down, which is of course important, but I don't think that is the only thing people will be watching for.
Yes, so you're saying it's about the signal that is sent out. Yes, well, that signal, some people will say, when you've got a huge mandate like the one you've got, you should risk unpopular situations. You can choose to be a little unpopular. Yes, Lord Desai.
Arnab, on the signal base.
I agree, but those may not be fiscal measures, as Omkar was saying right in the beginning. There may be all kinds of other measures as well. As I said, labor laws, clearly something is happening. Something is brewing in there.
Measures.
Those could come through.
Lord Desai.
They will come in Feb.
Look, the problem, the situation is that the vote on account was really a misleading document. It is a lot of window dressing. The deficit announced for last year is not accurate.
Agreed.
The deficit projected for this year is not accurate. The expenditure numbers have been artificially suppressed. Arun Jaitley has first of all to explain what the state of public finances is. As Navika was saying, the world has to be told that the vote on account was actually just a completely misleading document. The government doesn't have money to do anything populist at all. They don't even have money to do food security bill, the way the budget is. Now, unless Arun Jaitley gets a lot of money from disinvestment within fiscal 14-15, he has no money to spend on food security.
So where will he cut? Then he has to cut somewhere. Can he cut subsidies? You're right. The vote on account.
I think he is in a very good situation. He's in a very good situation saying, I have no money to spend on food security. I can only do this much. That's all I will do.
No, so where does he cut? You're saying there's only a limited amount of money to be made of disinvestment. Let's take the example of subsidies. The vote on account figures, for example, on subsidies were 200 crores above the last year's figures. So you are obviously the figures in the vote on account are wrong because subsidies are being seriously underestimated.
Arnab.
No, so where will...
Arnab.
Yes, go ahead.
Arnab. Listen to me. Arnab, if he actually meets all those spending requirements, the deficit numbers would definitely be more like 6 or 7% instead of 4.5%. That is a reality.
Sir, can Modi cut subsidies? Can Modi cut subsidies?
I can't help it now. I go to 7%.
So what did...
Either he cuts subsidies... Listen to me. Please listen to me. All I'm saying is either he says I'm going to go on giving subsidies and risk a 7% budget deficit, or he can say I'm going to cut all subsidies.
No, sir, look at the politics of this, sir.
That is a stark reality.
Let's go to Rajiv Kumar.
Politics of it is nothing. The economics of it is impossible.
No, sir. Any prime minister will have to look at the politics of it, won't he, Rajiv Kumar? After all, Narendra Modi said the first right of the country's coffers belong to the poor. Now, does that mean, therefore, that a rights-based, subsidies-based approach of the UPA government will continue in some way? Sanjeev says this is a time where foreign investors will look at a signal.
No. No, but Arnab, I think the most important thing is to restore the credibility of the fiscal process, restore the credibility of the government, which has been completely lost because of the fudging that has gone on in the past years. And what Navika has heard is from senior bureaucrats who want to hide behind this excuse that if you do that, then the rating agencies will downgrade us. Mr. Jaitley needs to come up clean with what the state of our fiscal is and draw a line underneath that, and then say, ladies and gentlemen, I cannot achieve 4.1% fiscal deficit in 14-15. I will achieve, however, 4.4%, and this is how I will do it. In doing so, you are absolutely right, he cannot do away with all the subsidies. But what he can do away is with our petroleum subsidies, because the UPA government has set that ball in motion. What he can do, therefore, is to let the diesel prices rise. And what he can do is to make a real effort at resource mobilization. Would you know that there is 4.5 lakh crore of tax revenues held up in litigation, of which 2.5 lakh crore is at the level of the Chief Commissioner appellates? Now Mr. Jaitley can and must bring the broom, must bring the reform to the CBDT. If he does that, if he actually announces an agenda of overhauling the CBDT in our country, not make it, the tool of government harassment, etc., etc., I think there is enough resources there. Just one figure, Arnab. Mr. Chidambaram announced a tax on the super rich last year, a 10% surcharge, who are people earning above 1 crore. And he said only 43,000 people, it will be applied only to 43,000 people. I told him, sir, that 43,000 are found in West Andheri. And why wouldn't this number be more like 430,000? The tax net has to be widened. A serious effort at resource mobilization has to be done. And finally, Mr. Jaitley will have to tell the industry quite candidly, ladies and gentlemen, please don't pressurize me into giving you one concession after the other. I'd heard Adi Godrej the other day make a whole litany of demands. He is not in a position to do that. He will do that later on. But first and foremost, he has to show that he's got the fiscal in his hand and he's going to bring about a change and bring about an improvement in the fiscal situation of the country. That's the key.
I think Rajiv, what you are saying is let's take a look at agriculture.
I entirely agree with Rajiv Kumar. I entirely agree with Rajiv.
In an election, so there has to be some politics to this budget. You know what Mr. Arun Jaitley said on the day one of ending his office.
That doesn't have to be. Now hang on. We got to get rid of this mentality. We got to get rid of this mentality.
So what? No, 1 minute. Just a minute. No, Meghnad Desai.
Crowd
Meghnad Desai.
At this moment, growth is really low.
Sir, 1 minute. Sir, Meghnad Desai, you keep talking about mentality. Can any political party, and by the way, there are elections to come. You think a general election is the last election? There's an election in Maharashtra. There are significant elections. Can the BJP risk a situation when it is compelled to pull back? All of you talk about pulling back fuel. So all of you talk about pulling back fuel subsidies as if it is the easiest thing, most easy thing to achieve. Can you risk? Can you trigger the unpopular situation that will emerge from that?
Arnab, that's already started.
Arnab, can I say something
here? The UPA government did that. The NDA government doesn't have to do anything.
Sir, can I say something here?
Yes, go ahead.
It's not difficult.
Can I say something?
Yes, Lord Desai.
Can I say something?
Yes, Lord Desai, please do.
Most subsidies help the rich, not the poor. Most subsidies are pro-rich, petroleum subsidy, diesel subsidy, fertilizer subsidy.
Sir, I am talking of cooking gas and diesel.
They are not for the poor.
Sir, I am talking of cooking gas and diesel.
He doesn't need to.
Yes, that too. Not
diesel doesn't help the poor.
Cooking gas is owned by a minority of people. Cooking gas is a minority of people. It's not for the poor. LPG subsidy is not for the poor. We got to get rid of this mentality that Congress inculcated that anything they subsidy is all for the poor. Well, it is not. Right. And we have wrecked public finances doing this, and this government has to have the courage to stop it.
Certainly the diesel subsidy is not.
No, 1 second. I still remember In my conversation with Modi, my conversation with Modi a few days before the results, I asked him this question and he said the first right of the country's coffer belongs to the poor. My government will cater to the poor. We have to listen to the poor. We have to cater to their needs. And he says, these are my exact words. Yeah. You think Mr. Modi will not think of the impact that, this hard approach of yours will...
But LPG is not...
He's a politician after all.
LPG is not used by the poor.
LPG was a big election issue.
By the poor.
Let's get off the LPG 1 second.
Yes.
LPG is not used by the poor.
And I just want to raise another question. Agricultural income is tax-free. If you are talking about the poor in India, which is 500 million people, they are the workers in agriculture. They are going to be tax-free in any case. The guys who make money out of agriculture are the zamindars and the big guys. Why is agriculture tax-free? Why every time we feel that, if you tax agriculture, you tax the poor. The poor does not earn enough money to pay taxes.
It's in the Constitution.
All I'm saying is, supposing he says, can I just go one more? Just one other point I want to raise.
Omkar Goswami.
You don't understand what's going on.
Sunil, first and foremost, let's not open up this issue. This has been opened up several times. To tax agriculture requires constitutional reform, which requires both houses to pass it.
Exactly.
This government, as of now, does not have the requisite votes in both houses. It's a constitution.
One second. I agree with you, Omkar. And I hate to say this.
Relatively tough budget, but with very, very good reform signals and very good signals which don't cost the exchequer more, such as I said, getting rid of the retrospective tax legislation and going in for disinvestments on a steady and serious basis. Remember, disinvestment is something that the UPA 2 completely lost track of, even UPA 1, and there's a hell of a lot to be had. But however, also remember I think people should go back to 1991. In July 1991, a rather poor orator called Manmohan Singh, and Jaitley is a far better orator, stood up to give his budget. It was the toughest budget that you could ever think of. 1991 and 1992 were the toughest budgets that India saw. And yet, the tide turned. So, to turn the tide does not require you to be extravagant. You can be absolutely honest, sincere, and be parsimonious where you need to be, and be sensible and directed where you need to be, and you can turn the tide. So I do not believe
I agree with that.
There are places that you cannot cut expenditure. Also, remember, you're talking of 3 items: petroleum, food, and fertilizer. You should look at the expenditure budget. Please look at the huge amounts of allocation under various heads. You can knock off 10% without a problem, without anyone even knowing it, because no one even knows what those demand for grants are. So there are ways of doing it.
Sorry, but
I don't know.
Rajiv Kumar. Rajiv Kumar is rebutting you, Omkar Goswami. No, Rajiv Kumar. Rajiv Kumar. What's wrong with what Omkar Goswami says? Even fertilizers, it has gone up 4-fold in the UPA period. This cooking gas and diesel have gone up 18 times in the UPA period. So why is it not achievable to shave off 10% without it getting noticed, as Omkar Goswami says?
But the fertilizers...
Rajiv Kumar.
Exactly what Omkar is saying.
Rajiv Kumar is rebutting him. Let's go one by one. Rajiv Kumar.
What Omkar was saying that he can shave off 10% from expenditure other than the 3 major subsidies. I'm afraid Mr. Chidambaram has left no room for that. He has had draconian cuts of both on plan and non-plan expenditures. 1,80,000 crore were cut away last year. Now, on the fertilizer subsidy, what he should do is to first announce the increase in gas prices, which the NDA, I'm afraid, is dithering upon, because otherwise there will be no investment in gas. Then there will be a higher subsidy to be paid, which the government should not pay, because that would then mean that the fertilizer subsidy in real terms will come down. On the petroleum subsidy, as I said earlier, diesel should be allowed to increase. The UPA government has set it in motion. NDA doesn't need to touch it. Kerosene subsidy, 9,000 crore of it 50% goes into the adulteration. Even Montek admitted that. I think officially.
No, that's
nobody uses kerosene these days.
But
I'm telling you, half of that goes into adulteration of the petrol. In Alwar district, when they switched from subsidy to actually just the sort of cash for subsidy, the subsidy amount came down by 80%. That's an empirical fact.
Yes, Navika.
So you can take away the fuel subsidies with just one last thing, Arnab. Just one last thing. The poor will be helped by creating growth and employment, and not by subsidies.
And how do you create growth and employment? Where is the investment going to come from? Where is the money to spend into these productive assets?
You said the government should increase gas prices. Those are reforms that you're talking about. Let's look at the practicality. The government has kept it frozen as a decision for the next 3 months. So clearly there are political compulsions, and political compulsions mean that at any given time, while you'll have to give the signals for growth, you could do that by announcing a GST roadmap with a tight time frame at this moment. You could do that by DTC, but it's very difficult to actually cut subsidies for Mr. Arun Jaitley, because there is a politics of the budget that he has to keep in mind. He has alliance partners. We just saw that even in the fuel price hike, the Maharashtra partners came and got a partial rollback on the suburban railway prices. So there is a reality of politics that has to be kept in mind. How do you think the finance minister is really going to do that?
It's not
only because there's a Maharashtra elections today.
The counter coming from Singapore from Sanjeev, please. Sanjeev, let Sanjeev counter. Let Sanjeev counter, Navika. I think he wanted to come in.
One thing over here that you have. I in fact agree with Navika, because the fact is, yes, that we need to reduce all these subsidies, but I don't think in a situation with the huge gaps we are talking about and possibly a major drought coming through, these subsidies can be reduced very substantially in one shot. So I think we need to begin taking a longer term view in terms of getting simplifying the tax system and creating buoyancy, and take a wider view of reforms. This cannot just be about fiscal issues, because the whole point is to get the economy going and get tax buoyancy going, and for that you cannot just look at this narrow issue of fiscal, because there is a wider issue here about getting this economy growing faster.
What about the Aam Aadmi? What do they get?
No, so this is the point.
Person who voted the BJP in, what does he get?
Point is,
what does the Aam Aadmi, the middle class, and by the way, the middle class was a large part of the support base of the BJP. What do they get?
Jobs.
What do they get?
Jobs.
Jobs. When?
Jobs.
4 years from now.
Jobs.